I am the dude behind this digital hauntology channel. You can call me Haunt, you can call me Mr. Hauntology, or you can call me by my real name, which is Nick. If you haven't seen one of these videos before, the idea is pretty simple. I take every game that I've covered in the last 5 video essays, and I basically try to slot them into this ever-growing list in an attempt to answer that question of, what's the best game that you've ever played? And then I also use these videos as an opportunity to address the state of the channel and talk to the community directly. So first things first, state of the channel. We have passed that threshold into 2,000 subscribers, which is incredibly gnarly. I never thought that we were going to get over 50, so we're going stronger than I ever thought. And we are well on our way to 2,500, with there being a pretty strong chance that by the next time you see me in one of these ranking videos, we might actually be at 3,000. So fingers crossed, and I love you guys. Other than that, we have some YouTube members who actually support this channel. We have Smelly Uglies, we have Russell Bland, I see you in the comments all the time. And then of course we have friend of the channel, Hypertension Films, who you've probably seen his stuff. We collaborate a little bit, shout each other out in our videos wherever applicable. But he is a fellow YouTuber and he makes some of the best stuff on this platform. So if you haven't subscribed to him, subscribe to him now. And then also, you know, in terms of other YouTubers that you might want to check out Terry303. I've shouted him out in other videos, but yeah, he's one of the best, and he just makes these like hyper opinionated RPG videos. And then of course there is Jacob the Dabbler from Australia, who dabbles in everything and just makes some of the funniest videos I've ever seen on this platform. But with all that said, let's jump right into this list. So the first game that we covered for this update is going to be the DLC to Alan Wake 2, otherwise called The Lake House. And yeah, like I know in a previous upload, I basically said that the one that came before this, the DLC, the Night Springs, I wasn't a huge fan. You can watch the video, you can watch the last one of these ranking videos where I, explained why, but I just didn't really feel like it lived up to the promise that was Alan Wake 2. I thought the combat was a little sloppy. I thought that the storytelling was kind of, I don't know, it just lacked the stakes that I otherwise was hoping for. And the Lake House changes all of that. Really, the Lake House is the most direct bridge that we have between Alan Wake 2 and Control and the eventual Control sequel, Control 2, that I can't wait for. And it leans into that by basically elevating everything that made Alan Wake 2 such a good survival horror game. You're in an underground facility. It's kind of got a Resident Evil type of vibe. You're going down further and further into this Control Federal Bureau of Control facility. You're uncovering a bunch of mysteries that have larger implications in the shared Remedy universe. And like they have crazy creature design. Everything that you like about Control, everything that you like about Alan Wake is here. And the combat just feels very tight this time around. All the context just lines up. If anything, it is probably one of my favorite bits of Remedy content, and it just elevates Alan Wake 2 above even where it's at right now. So with that being said, the real question is, does a killer DLC to Alan Wake 2, and just Alan Wake 2 being completely done at this point, finally, does that elevate Alan Wake 2 above Control? And I don't know, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So it's close, it's the closest it's ever been, but I'm gonna keep Alan Wake 2 right in that number 2 spot. All right, yeah, like it's so close, but Control rules. All right, so the next video was kind of weird. I covered CONCORD, which was the failed PS5 shooter, team shooter. And, the game came out, it failed to find an audience, it got shit on mercilessly by the internet at large. People were calling it all sorts of crazy stuff like DEI, cringe, gay, all as a pejorative. And the game just completely tanked and was kind of the whipping boy for the, lamer part of the internet. And the thing that makes that video especially weird is I never played CONCORD. I had a buddy, one of my best friends actually. I called him Concord Chris in the video, and I interviewed him and talked about his experience with the game, and he gave me a bunch of footage to allow for me to cover it. And I never got to play the game. And really watching him play it, hearing him talk about it, I couldn't help but feel like I had missed out on something. I'm not going to say that this is the best game ever made or anything like that, but there was something there, and now I will never be able to experience it, like any of you if you were curious. Concord's gone, and that's kind of a shame. So first things first, I cannot really put it on this list. You know, I never played it, but what I can do is create a new section, because if we're being honest, with games being completely digital nowadays, and this is kind of what the larger video was about, it was kind of this all digital future that we're finding ourselves in, and how some art is just now going to be disposable and is going to disappear. And I think that's a damn shame. I believe in preservation. I believe that, you know, something that's been worked on that hard by that many people deserves to, you know, be playable in some state going forward. But whether it be market forces or technology or just, you know, people at large, we are in a period where we are going to see more and more games disappeared. So I'm going to call this section Dead Games, and we're going to go ahead and put Concord right there. So yeah, Concord is the #1 dead game that I wish that I had played. And with that video being about, you know, kind of digital experiences, always online titles, live service titles, I talked about a whole lot of games, but I did kind of insert a mini review in that video, and that was for a title called ONRUSH. If you haven't played ONRUSH, it was an amazing kind of MOBA influenced burnout style off-road racer made by the same core people that made the MotorStorm games back on the PS3. And the sense of speed was out of control. The vibe was just like Burning Man mixed with like weird like EDM kind of like Y2K era aesthetics. And it just had this kind of Mad Max quality to it, while also just being like, you know, this pulsing loud experience that I loved. I loved it. But going back to it now, you can only access like very little content. You can access what is ostensibly the glorified tutorial mode, and then like even content that you would unlock through playing the game is now sealed because it requires like an online authenticator to unlock new skins for your vehicles, unlock new racers or skins for your racers and all that kind of stuff. So like you can still check out ONRUSH, you can boot it up, play through the single player stuff. There's not much there, but you can get a sense of what this game is. And it's loud and it's beautiful and it's fast as fuck, but you will always be experiencing a diminished version of what was intended there. And that is because the servers are down. So I want to put that on this list. I love ONRUSH, and I'm going to be completely honest. Like, if I was covering this game when it was alive and well, I could see it being, you know, all the way up in the top, you know, maybe 10, 15. I can't say enough good stuff about ONRUSH. But in its current state, there is so little to do, so little reason to justify even picking up a copy and trying to get into it. I mean, if you can find a copy for around $5, that's probably the sweet spot to just kind of check it out as a curiosity. But like, they killed the game effectively. And so with that said, in its diminished state, you know, I'm going to look at it towards the bottom. Like, I would rather play ONRUSH than a lot of these games. But I think, I think I'm going to put it right here. Yeah. I mean, you know, the game is effectively dead, but I still would rather play it than Grey Hill Incident. I mean, that probably speaks to, you know, Grey Hill just not being quite what I'm into. They did update Grey Hill since I last covered it, but even though it is more playable than it used to be, the core design is just not really there. So yeah, we're gonna put ONRUSH there for now. And then for the next video, I did something kind of bigger than I've done in a long time, which is I took a concept which was trauma and depression and I looked specifically for games that covered those topics. And I wrote about no fewer than 9 different games while kind of using it as an opportunity to address certain societal issues, talk about my own experiences. If you haven't seen that video, I put a lot of my, self into it. And for whatever reason, it just didn't do too well with the YouTube algorithm. So if you're watching this and you haven't seen that video, check it out. I'm extremely proud of it. But yeah, I covered 9 games in that video that talked about those themes. So let's get into it. So the first game that we covered in that video was Little Misfortune, which is a Swedish point-and-click adventure game made by Kill Monday Studios. It's got this kind of cartoony art style, Courage the Cowardly Dog kind of writing, and it is this concept about, he plays this little girl who is going to be dying at the end of this story, and a narrator basically is guiding her, towards her death. The narrator being, the force of death itself in a lot of ways. And so you play this adventure. It's really a bleak, conceit. You got this little girl who's dying. She comes from a broken home. The whole town is kind of like, strange and fucked up. Kids have been turning up dead around it. But it always kind of keeps it lighthearted. The game wants to be funny and creepy and cute at the same time. And I think that it does a good job of doing all of those things. But, realistically, it is a pretty simple experience. This is, not even like the old Tim Schafer Day of the Tentacle adventure games. This is more walking simulator, interact with items, interact with environments, and then just kind of push the narrative forward. And so it really kind of does rest on its presentation and its overall narrative. And I think the overall narrative it's good. I didn't really like the writing sometimes. Sometimes they wanted me to laugh at things that were just like kind of horrible. But it had a vibe for sure. And the presentation is just gorgeous. And the voice acting is fun. And it's a cool experience. But like with it being kind of largely uninteractive, I'm not entirely sure where to put it on this list. I mean, I don't know. I didn't vibe with it as much as I thought I would, but it's definitely cool. If you can get it for cheap, check it out. But let's see. I would probably put it, I think I'm going to put it here under Valkyrie Elysium. Everything that I covered in that video is going to be pretty hard to actually place on this list because we are looking at more non-interactive experiences or like, marginally interactive experiences that are really just wrapped around storytelling devices. And so, these aren't really going to be easy to compare to traditional video games, but I do think they have like enough artistic merit, and some of them I think push really far. Little Misfortune, like there's an argument that it could go up, maybe around here, but I think that realistically it's okay here. And Final Fantasy 1, as important as that game is, like I really just did not have any fun with it. I just kind of went through it for like historical sake. It was an amazing landmark achievement at the time that it came out, but we are so far removed from what that game was doing. I think you got to play Final Fantasy 1 if you like Final Fantasy. You got to experience it. But I think I'd put Little Misfortune here, and I feel like Valkyrie Elysium I had a little bit more fun with. Kind of harsh, but that's where it's going to go for now. But the next game that I covered in that video was 1000 Times Resist, made by a small indie developer called Sunset Visitor. And that game is another one of these kind of point and click walking simulator style games. But the narrative is one of the best that I've ever seen in any medium. The concept is kind of basic at its core, but overly complex in the narrative that, kind of erupts out of it. But at its core, you play as this character named Iris, who is just your typical high school student. However, she is the child of immigrants that came from the Hong Kong protests and found a place to live in Canada. But as she is making her way through high school, some sci-fi stuff happens that essentially kills all of humanity except for her. And while everybody is dying, some scientists clone her and essentially make a whole entire community around copies of this same person. And then it kind of becomes your job to play as these clones, kind of figure out everything that is going around Iris, everything that is what it means to be human. It's got some real Near Automata vibes. I don't even know how to talk about it without, spoiling so much. What I will say is this, at its core, what this game really addresses is intergenerational trauma. The sins of our father and our mother, how we carry them, and then how we project our problems and our trauma onto the people that come after us. And gorgeous game, insane ideas in terms of like interactivity where you're, traveling through these environments, but you're constantly able to switch time frames, go years into the future, go years into the past, all while just trying to string together this insane narrative. Um, yeah, I loved this game so much. It's probably one of the better games I've ever played, even though, interactivity is low, but it didn't matter when compared to what else was here. So, looking at that, I think I'm gonna put it right here. It's incredible. I mean, Visage, I think that it just slightly ekes that one out. Visage is an insane horror story, probably one of the most effective horror games I've ever played. But again, like, that is not a game that is like super mechanically dense. It is just kind of run away from monsters, and then it is a walking simulator disguised as a horror experience in a lot of its, rollout. And I think that, like, with it being something that I loved so much, despite, being in a genre that I don't really mess with, I'm not a horror guy at all, really, even though, I try my best. Um, 1000 times resist. Yeah, it needs to go up as high as it can. I think Kana is just a little too impressive for it to shoot past that. I mean, we are talking about, one of the best Zelda likes in, like the history of video games, while also being just this incredible showcase for Ember Labs' like animation priority. The game has got amazing bosses. I don't know. Watch my video on Kana. It's been a long time since I played it, but it is one of the best games that I've ever played. And I think that I just can't put 1000 times resist quite up that high, but I think I'm happy with it in the number 4 spot. And then the next game that we covered in that video was Omori, made by OMOCAT. And it is a RPG Maker style experience, similar to something like an Undertale or something of that nature. And it's the kind of game that bait and switches you. On one hand, it is kind of this like exploration of like childhood and, just being a kid and existing in the dog days of summer. But really, everything that points in that direction is an illusion for what is being covered up. And that is that your character, Omori, who is really not that is a projection of himself. Sunny is your main character, and he has gone through some of the worst trauma that any human can. I don't want to spoil it, but basically something so terrible happened to and around him that he has retreated into his own mind and basically tried to distance himself from his entire life. He's a shut-in now, and he just daydreams, and that's where you play the majority of this game. And the game is about pulling back and kind of forcing him to confront all of the things that have happened in his life that have led him to this moment. And incredible music, great characters, one of the most heartbreaking kind of like late game reveals I've ever seen. When that game wrapped up, I was, kind of shotgunning through the end of it. It was late. It was probably, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I just kind of locked in at that point, and I was like, we're gonna see this through. And I was just out on the couch by myself, just bawling. Um, I am an emotional guy. I don't try to hide that, but like, most of the time it takes quite a bit to actually get like video games to hit me right there. And this one just fucking did it while also being a, fun and cute RPG to play other times. So yeah, Omori rules. If you haven't played it, you're fucking up. Like, I don't know what else to say. But yeah, like, man, this is hard. I think that out of all the games that are on this list, kind of one that I want to, like, that I'm comparing it to the most is probably Gone Home. I mean, Gone Home is a kind of the, one of the main games that pushed forward the whole walking simulator genre. And it's a game about exploring a house and trying to figure out what's going on in the people's lives who live there, with there being like a big emphasis on like identity and sexual identity and abuse and like, trauma. Um, that game actually would have fit really well in this video, but I'd already covered it previously. Um, I think that Omori is very much in the same wheelhouse, and I think I would put it one above. And then with Beyond Good and Evil, I think I'm actually going to put it above Beyond Good and Evil as well. Like, I love Beyond Good and Evil. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But Omori is so bold in what it's doing that it deserves to be as high up as it can. I think A Plague Tale Requiem pushes some topics just way further while being insanely impressive technically and being just a solid um, kind of survival horror light experience. Kind of similar to something like a Last of Us or something, but, taking place during the plague with all these rats flowing in. And yeah, I don't know. I think Amori, I'm going to put it right here. But, again, with with this list, like, once we get up this high in the topics, like, once we get this high into the rankings, all these are amazing. And Amori probably could go higher or lower depending on the day. But it's amazing. Play it if you haven't. All right, so the next two games are actually a, indie title and its sequel made by Russian developer Nikita Krukov. And they're called Milk Inside a Bag of Milk and Milk Outside a Bag of Milk. And these are more visual novel experiences than anything. You click through dialogue, you read, and sometimes you interject by making a choice or two. But a lot of the choices that you're making, they're pretty limited. And if you push it too hard into certain directions, if you're too much of a dick, the game will kick you to credits. So, idea is that you have this girl. She has gone through some sort of just, crazy mental anguish. She's gone through some sort of physical trauma as well. And she has a completely like skewed perspective on the world. Something kind of mirroring like a schizophrenia or, just severe anxiety. But then there's also this kind of physical component to it where the character is seeing everything in shades of red due to some head trauma that she went through. And so you have this character that is being tasked with something super simple: go to the store, buy some milk. But because this character has been through so much, is so, you know, damaged, it, everything is elevated to threat level. Every person she interacts with is kind of portrayed as like a monster or an alien. The world looks unforgiving and scary and twisted, and it is just this like bleak experience that is written just it's so well written. um Partially, like, it comes to this like feeling of being a fish out of water. I'm wondering if the translation from Russian to English aided in that feeling, because the whole time you're reading it, you're like, I think I know what this person means, but you can't tell if it's just their perspective and the way that they interact with the world, or, is it written this way because it was translated a certain way. Incredible presentation. I love the music so much. I drive around to it sometimes. I revisit it a lot. And then its sequel takes that same concept, but instead of you being outside in the world, you're back home after, going and getting the bag of milk, and you're realizing that like there's no safe space even in your own home. And it's this like incredibly personal feeling experience. Um, it's really sad. It's really bleak. It can end. There's a couple of endings. It can end on a real like with a sense of hope, but like there's nothing I've ever played like it. It made me. I said in the video that I covered it in that like there was a time that I was hospitalized and I actually had to, be in like a, a mental institution. I was, you know, for a short amount of time, involuntary hold. And during that time, I talked to this kid that had schizophrenia. And this game really reminded me of talking to that kid. It was just, yeah, man, it's heavy, but I loved it so much. The game is, there's nothing like it. But with that being said, like, how do you rate a visual novel, compared to all of these, video games that are largely playable with deep mechanics and like all that kind of stuff? Like, it's hard to say. Um, I think that, where I kept kind of landing when I was thinking about where I'd place it on this list, I would say that Milk Inside, I'd probably put right below Lenneth, because I think Lenneth has a pretty heavy story, different kind of style, but then it's also this like mechanically rewarding experience as well. And then you have something like Killer Frequency, which is all vibes and this really cool experience, but kind of 80s slasher horror. But I think that Milk Inside is just a little bit more earnest and like confident in what it is. It doesn't kind of rely on tropes. It's just going for itself. So I'm gonna put Milk Inside a Bag of Milk right here. And then for its sequel, I'm gonna put Milk Outside a Bag of Milk. I mean, the game is kind of like a continuation of what you just experienced, but it does have like elevated production levels. The art is, there's like kind of anime bookended cutscenes now. Things are like a little bit more grim. The soundtrack's got this like crazy drone metal and all that. But by it being a little bit more like produced, I suppose, like it kind of lost its edge in that like alien quality that I really liked about the first game. So I think I'm gonna put the second one right here, because I think A Plague Tale: Innocence, it is the prequel, or the first game in the series, the Plague Tale series. This was kind of like a proof of concept. All that rat tech was there. The story's bleak, it's heavy, it takes place during the plague. Really cool stealth experience, kind of, again, Last of Us light kind of experience. But then, something like Vampire Survivors is like a fun kind of survival smash TV thing that I think is expertly done. But again, I feel like Milk Outside is just, so personally resonant that I don't want it to go any lower on this list. And then we have the game that pretty much launched this concept of making a game about depression and trauma, which was Actual Sunlight. It's another RPG Maker game similar to Omori, made by one man, O'Neill. He's a writer and programmer, and he's worked on several games. Maybe most popular one would be Superliminal, or this Actual Sunlight, which was kind of like his big breakout moment. And it is a very simple game to play. You walking simulator, again, top-down RPG, interact with items, read descriptions. But the thing is, this is being written by someone who has dealt with severe depression and thoughts of, leaving this world by their own hand. And you get obliterated by this prose, man. Like, whatever he's interacting with, you can feel like Evan Winters, the main character in this game, he's not gonna make it. It's clear. And it just gets more and more bleak as it goes, but it explores like, kind of that mindset of what pushes people to doing something like that. And, again, in that video, I talked about my own personal experiences with, trying to leave. And, obviously I'm still here 10 years later. But when I was getting better, after kind of my low point in life, I played this game, and it really resonated, and it made me know that I'm not alone, and that there's like these beautiful people that are going through all of this terrible shit, but like, you know, sometimes on the other side of it, they can weaponize it, you know, they can make some dope art with it. And yeah, man, this was, I was kind of going through a bit of a funk when I made that video. That's why I wanted to make it, you know. I'm depressed, let's talk about some depressing shit. Yeah, man, like, if it wasn't for that game, I wouldn't have made the video, and if it wasn't for that game, like, yeah, like it helped a lot when I needed it. So let's figure out where we're gonna put that one. I want to put that higher up on this list. You know, maybe art style wise, it leaves something to be, you know, desired. Writing wise, it blows everything away. I think realistically, I'm gonna put it one below Titan Chaser. Titan Chaser, like if actual sunlight like kind of holds a black mirror to life and like makes you interact with things that you don't want to think about, Titan Chaser is this like dreamlike experience that, you know, lets you live something that you just wish was real. And all vibes, grounded mechanics. You really feel like you're driving this car and scaring these titans away. Probably, if this was a list of my favorite games, because this is a list of what I think the best game is. So like what I'm doing here is I'm, you know, taking my own personal experience with it, but then I'm like looking at it mechanically, and I'm basically like, probably the easiest way for me to explain what this list ultimately is how easy would it be for me to recommend one of these games to anybody, to a stranger. I think that like Control Ultimate Edition, if you have played a video game, there's a good chance that you can probably vibe with what's going on there. It may not be one-to-one, but like there's a strong argument for it being a game that you should pick up and play right now. Something like Titan Chaser, something like Actual Sunlight, those are games that are incredibly profound, but you know, it might have some qualifying statements like, you should try this because of this, or you should try this because I know you personally are into this kind of subject matter. So I'm gonna put Actual Sunlight here, and then next up we have kind of a weird one for that video, David Szymanski's Iron Lung. On its surface, it's more of a horror experience, kind of like weird submarine simulator. So it doesn't really line up with like being about depression and trauma in the same way that these games have like overt themes about. But the feeling that you get while being isolated and piloting the submarine that they've, you know, welded you into, and you can't even see out the front window, the hopelessness of that situation and how much more fucked up it gets as you push on. It's very effective, claustrophobic, and like just bleak. Like, you know, you're in trouble the whole time. And it's hyper effective stuff. It's a pretty short experience. You know, once you kind of wrap your head around, you know, moving around in this underwater environment without being able to see by using your gauges and your maps and all your equipment, you know, it's a pretty straightforward experience. Not much in the way of writing, not much in the way of you know, really content. Like, you just kind of pilot around until shit keeps getting worse. I loved it, but again, I don't know where to put something like that, like when compared to the rest of these games. I know, like, if I'm thinking about it, like, I would rather play it, you know, than Little Misfortune. I think I'm gonna put it just one below Wanted Dead. Wanted Dead was just so like mechanically rewarding, and the vibes were so out there, and it's kind of got like, you know, disaster piece writing. It almost feels like Tommy Wiseau's The Room in a lot of ways, but like, I was enthralled the entire time. It's one of my favorite aesthetics in a video game. I don't know, like, Iron Lung is awesome. And there's an argument that it could go up very high. Like, I could probably even have it hang out somewhere near, like, a Titan Chaser. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that, it's in a good spot right here. Play Iron Lung if you haven't, and Hypertension Films was actually the one that got me into this one. So, shout out to my boy. And, you know, I think he would probably disagree with me. I think he'd probably put it way higher up on the list, but make your own list, Johnny. So after that, the final game that we covered on the, depression and trauma video was another O'Neill joint, and it was called Little Red Lie. And if Actual Sunlight is this like really bleak character study about someone on the edge, Little Red Lie is about like complete societal collapse and, society crumbling beneath you. Similar in execution, top-down kind of RPG Maker vibe, and you run around, talk to people, get obliterated by his O'Neill's prose. I think this one maybe, because of my own personal background, I feel like Actual Sunlight just hits a lot harder, even though this game, it hits hard, and it fucked me up for about a week. But I don't know, maybe it's just like because I'm a bit of like a leftist and like, kind of a progressive, that I'm already kind of been aware of like a lot of what this game's pointing out. And I agree with its messaging, even though I wish I didn't. The art style has been updated. It's a way prettier game than Actual Sunlight. I think that the vibe is great. The music is insane. Like, but I feel like Actual Sunlight is kind of that first at bat that knocked it out of the park. And then the second game is this longer, more ambitious thing that I think there are moments where it absolutely nails what it's going for. But sometimes I miss that punk rock spirit of the first title. But again, incredible storytelling. So play this shit. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That being said, it is close to Actual Sunlight. I'd rather play Sonic Frontiers than Little Red Lie. So it's a better time. it's fun. Even you got like Goku Sonic and Shadow of the Colossus, levels and shit. Like, it's a vibe. I'm gonna put Little Red Lie here. Yeah, like I can't stress this enough. With these kind of more story first, minimal gameplay kind of games, these are the hardest ones to put on this list. I think that they're incredibly profound. I think they're important. I think that every single one of those I can recommend. Maybe not Little Misfortune so much. I feel like that one's just a little weird, but I liked it. I recommend it, but I recommend these games over it. That's gonna round out the depression video right there. So we have two more games that we covered, and then we'll round out this ranking. So the next one was Titanfall 2, and specifically this was a video on the single player component. Titanfall 2 as a package is one of the fucking best shooters I've ever played, and the campaign elevates that, to ungodly levels. Made by Respawn, which came out of Infinity Ward's collapse, after Activision just kind of fucked everybody over. And, they struck out, they made their own brand new experience, mech combat, wall running, shooting. Everything's as tight as it is in Call of Duty, if not better. And then you have like this extra level of everything's elevated. That single player campaign is kind of this idea. It's like a dying breed now. Like now, every shooter campaign you play seems to have RPG kind of like systems built into it, whether it be like a more overt RPG like a Cyberpunk, or more Ubisoft style game like a Far Cry or something. And this is a level based, Half-Life 2 kind of. Every level is an opportunity for the developers to show you a new trick that they want to work with and a new sandbox for you to play in. I love Titanfall 2. it is so good. Like, yeah, man, just there's certain games that you play where it's like kinesthetics was the word that I used, right? Where it's just like, how good does it feel when I push button? How well does this button press translate to like some hot shit going on the screen? Titanfall 2 is the king of that. They're the fucking king of that. So, where do I put it? It's high up on the list, but I think it deserves it, and I think Alan Wake 2 is just a bit too ambitious to be overshadowed by Titanfall 2. But if you were to tell me that you thought Titanfall 2 is the best game of all time, I probably wouldn't disagree with you that hard. So, and to round us out today, we have HACKNET, single, indie developed computer hacking simulator by Australian developer Matt Trobiani and Team Fractal Alligator is what he calls himself. But basically, you boot up this game, you play from a Unix environment, kind of like, a Linux kernel, and you are trying to hack as a like method of figuring out what happened to another hacker who's kind of like has a dead man switch. This guy went missing. He's presumed dead. After 14 days, some automated communications go out from this guy, and he's trying to task you with finding out what happened to him and kind of getting to the center of like this corporate fuckery that is, threatening the existence of the entire internet, basically. What makes the game special is just you're doing some basic level computing in this. You aren't programming, you aren't understanding computer systems on a bit-by-bit level, but you are learning console commands, command prompt, and you are kind of learning the basic like methodology of computer hacking, whether you're doing like phishing attacks, whether you are just breaking into unsecure systems and probing around and then scanning for other things on networks. Like, you feel like you are you're doing the computer hacking, like you feel like a hacker, and that was really the design ethos of this experience. And all the while, just like some dope synth wave is just kicking off, and you got that throbbing bass that is just keeping you moving. It's fucking sick. What I would say is it's kind of a harder game to recommend than some of these others because, some familiarity with computers is going to really aid you in this experience. And then also, even if you, are a little inexperienced, like I'm not that experienced, you have to kind of have, you're going to need the want. Like, you feeling like a hacker is going to be is going to have to be an important fantasy for you in order for this to click. But if you are interested in like playing a computer hacking game or a game that makes you feel like a hacker, HACKNET's the best. Like, it's the best game to ever do it. Super novel idea, super fun idea. Where do you put HACKNET on the list? I would put it above Actual Sunlight. So we got this little group to work in. Gone Home, I think, is a little too effective at what it does, even though HACKNET is like knocks it out of the park. If you have a mission statement of make a game that makes you feel like a hacker, all right. I think Voice of Cards: The Forsaken Maiden is one of my favorite RPGs in recent years, if not all time. RoboCop. I think HACKNET's better than RoboCop. I think HACKNET's better than Solstice. Let's put it here. No. Let's put it here. Yeah, like, Voice of Cards is one of my favorite RPGs, but, there are a lot of things about it that are definitely in that tropey kind of arena. A lot of it's seen that, done that kind of stuff. Been here before. HACKNET, I think, just kind of wins out on like raw originality. I mean, we are talking about the top of this list, so everything here is amazing. But yeah, I'm gonna put HACKNET there. I mean, obviously, if you've been watching these videos, you've seen that sometimes I'll remix the list if there's like 1 or 2 titles that are really bothering me. But right now, I think I like the state. Oh, and before I forget, during the Concord video, I did mention that there was a game called Crossfire X that had a Remedy exclusive single-player shooter campaign. So basically, the Max Payne guys made a Call of Duty campaign. It is no longer accessible, but I do want to play that. I wish I had played that, so let's put that on the list as well. All right, and with that, I think that's going to be the end of this video. We will be doing another one of these after I've got 5 more uploads, so I'll see you then, or at least I hope to. And until then, you're all beautiful people, and I hope you have a great day.